Whodats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
You've made it a point to soak in every moment and take in everything. Did you walk off the football field thinking this could possibly be your last game in New Orleans?
Yeah, you know what? I just was so invested, with this game and the preparation this week, and obviously just staying very, very focused and in the moment with it. Haven't given any thought beyond that.
Drew Brees' thoughts with me after the last game of the Saints season. Oh, another tough one for the New Orleans Saints. Welcome to your Been There, Done That podcast. I'm Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in my partners, producer Justin Thomas, and my co-host Scott Shanle. Those are the thoughts of Drew Brees, but Shanle, we know Drew Brees is finished, and that's tough. I heard somebody say it's like losing a family member. I know that's a decent metaphor. I've lost family members. I think that's a little extreme, but it does make sense in terms of how much Drew Brees has meant to the Whodat Nation and to the Saints organization.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have said in 2006 that Drew Brees is going to play through the 2020 season, I think a lot of people would have said you're crazy. Nobody's going to play that long or play at a level that he played at for that long. So it is tough, and I think it makes it even tougher not only losing Drew and knowing you'll never see him be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints again, but you know that this 4-year window that this team was built to win a Super Bowl over the past 4 years wasn't even able to get to a Super Bowl, let alone win one. I think that's the toughest pill for Whodat Nation to swallow, that you weren't able to come away with the championship even though you won more games than anybody in the past 4 years. And then you look at it and you look at Drew's career, and I think a lot of Saints fans, besides having that second trophy for validation of greatness for their Saints team, you're looking for that second trophy of validation for Drew and his greatness as well.
Justin, quick math. How old were you 15 years ago? Just around what age were you 15 years ago?
Oh, God, that's a good point. I was about 26, I think.
Okay, so 26.
No, sorry, about 21.
Okay, 21. So most of your 20s and half of your 30s, Drew Brees has been the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And I think it's really strange if you're, say, 8 years old and then you're in your early 20s. That's all you've known as success when this organization hasn't had it. I mean, it's going to be strange, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was literally just thinking that. I think I've been seriously following the Saints for about 25 years, and 15 of that has been Drew Brees there. So most of my Saints, fandom has only been knowing Drew Brees.
But Shanle, you have obviously a different perspective because you played with Drew. You've been out of the game for about 7 years. How weird is it going to be for you next season not to see him?
Oh, it's going to be really weird. I think, the past couple of years, we got a little bit of a taste. I think It would be even harder, if we wouldn't have saw the 5 games from Teddy Bridgewater or saw the multiple games this year with Taysom Hill. And the Saints, they were able to win those games because the roster has been set up to win despite not having Hall of Fame play from Drew Brees. I think that says a lot about what they were able to do with the roster. But I think that helps a little bit. It doesn't make it all go away. It's still going to be hard to not see number 9 back there and orchestrating the 2-minute drill and doing all those different things and seeing the repeating licking the fingers and the shaking the arm out and all those things you get so used to seeing Drew when he's locked in. It's going to be weird seeing a full year of not having that.
Justin, by the way, about as good as math as I am, if somebody would ask me that, I would have done a double take on how long 15 years ago was for me too. But when you talk about Brees, it's his last game. Boy, it was tough to watch him walk off the field, blow kisses to his family, and then take that quick look back before he went through the tunnel. And it's tough to know that's your last memory of Drew Brees, losing a game like that where he played a big part in it, Shanle, with 3 interceptions. But I thought of this after the game. I used to work in Jacksonville, and I remember the Jacksonville Jaguars eliminated the Miami Dolphins, and they beat them 62-7. And the quarterback for the Dolphins was Dan Marino. And that was Dan Marino's last game. He didn't throw for 100 yards in that game. He had 2 interceptions in that game. But when you look back at his career, you don't think of that game when you think of Dan Marino. And when the dust settles, I know it was tough the last couple years, but fans will not think of this when they think of Drew Brees.
Yeah, there's no question, and that was a great tweet you sent out when you said that, because I think sometimes you need things like that to put it all into perspective. And this one's going to cut deep. It's going to hurt Saints fans. It's going to hurt Drew for about a year or so. But then after that, you're going to look at what this guy did. I mean, there's so many Saints fans that never thought they would see the day that their team would win a Super Bowl, and let alone winning a Super Bowl, but be one of the main teams, one of the main draws, the main ticket in the NFL. Every time the Saints play on TV, they're one of the highest rated teams. And I think I saw the Buccaneers and Saints game was the highest rated telecast for like the last couple of years or something crazy. The numbers are astronomical, and you look at it, and Drew Brees brought that. Number 9 brought that to the New Orleans Saints. And there's so many things that you start to measure things by championships, and people get carried away with that Lombardi trophy and rings. But how many guys going into the Hall of Fame can say they were able to resurrect a city, a state, a region over 14 years? That's hard for people to say. And number 9 can say that he did that.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective, Scott. And another thing on social media that drives me crazy. I know I shouldn't pay attention to this stuff sometimes, but Drew should get some blame. Obviously, the last couple of years, the Minnesota game and throwing all the picks against the Bucks. But there were so many times where he should have won the game and didn't. I mean, I think it kind of balances out when you look at the postseason struggles with the Saints under Drew Brees.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, and that's to be fair. I mean, everybody, when you get to playoff football, has to play their best football in order for you to get to the ultimate goal, and that's lifting up the trophy. And when you look at the past few years, I mean, you go back to 2017. Drew led that remarkable comeback in Minnesota, but didn't play well in the first half. The Rams game. We look at the Rams game, much like we look at the Buccaneers game from last week. The Saints had plenty of opportunities early in both those games to put those teams away, but couldn't come away. You look at the Bucs game, should have been 14-0. Instead, you're sitting there at 6-0, and you're kind of thinking back to the Rams game. It was the same type of issue. You started the game real fast, and you just weren't able to put those things away. And then last year's Minnesota game, offense really never looked in sync. So I think the frustrating thing for Saints fans is you look at the Sean Payton and Drew Brees era, and you automatically think of great offense. But really, the offense has been the reason they didn't advance the last 4 years in the playoff games, and that's probably the most frustrating part of it.
Absolutely. I do a one-on-one with Drew Brees after every game, and that's over. I'm not going to be doing that. We're going to have a sit down with him once he makes the retirement official. But portions of my one-on-one we're going to air in just a bit. We're going to get into what the Saints have to do as they're way, way over the salary cap. But first, I want to talk about the game itself. And Shanle, I thought the key to this game was Jared Cook's fumble. And, people can blame Jared Cook, but I thought Antoine Winfield made a great play. But if they don't fumble there, I think even if they get a field goal, the Saints win that game because the defense had the Bucs offense on its heels.
Yeah, that play to me was the play of the game as well. Because everything that happened after that play was bad. And that play, just everything spiraled out of control. And you have to take care of the football. The teams that win the turnover battle in the playoffs are going to win games. And that kind of started to spiral into the Saints having to throw the ball a little bit more. Drew obviously wasn't healthy enough to throw the ball down the field. It was a lot of dink and dunk the whole game. They went to man. Once Tampa Bay found out that the Saints couldn't throw the ball down the field, they just started playing really tight man, and that gave the Saints offense trouble. But I think the frustrating thing with Jared is Jared hasn't played well all year. It's been very inconsistent. And so for it to be Jared Cook who fumbled the ball, I think that led to even more frustration for Saints fans because Jared was a big free agent acquisition. You've seen peaks or you've seen little glimpses of greatness in what he can do, but I think what would describe his career with the Saints is very inconsistent, and you certainly can't turn the ball over in those moments.
Drew Brees never makes excuses, but you can make a case that was his worst playoff game, one of the worst games of his career. But his wife, Brittany Brees, in an Instagram post said it was more than the ribs. It was more than the collapsed lung. It was the shoulder. He had multiple injuries. He had rotator cuff the shoulder. What do you make of that? I mean, we knew Drew wasn't feeling right, but I didn't think it was that bad.
No, I didn't either. And I think that's a wife kind of letting everybody know, she has social media. She sees what everybody's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for her, I'm going to put this out there and let everybody know exactly what he was playing through so that you can kind of understand what he went through. And when she put that out there, I don't think I took it as, well, here we go with the excuses, because Michael Thomas early in the week, he was playing through a lot of it too. I think I looked at it as she's sticking up for her husband, letting everybody know just what this game has done to his body. And for me, Mike, it made sense when she said everything that he'd been playing through. I thought back to the Tampa Bay game that we just lost and thought, all those injuries, it makes sense now. It makes sense now why we weren't throwing the ball beyond 10 or 15 yards. If he's got shoulder issues, foot issues, rib issues, can you imagine trying to throw the ball deep 5 to 10 times a game? It's probably why they had to bring Jameis in and throw the ball deep on the trick play.
By the way, when Jameis threw that, I thought they're going to win. I'm like, that is the ultimate Sean Payton move. Not only being creative and copying the Bears the week prior, but Shanle, it was that's your old boy. We're using him better than you did, and that's why he's going to love. I mean, it was he definitely did that for the Bucs game too. I mean, wasn't that part of it?
Oh, absolutely. And it was Sean's way of saying, hey, I love this play. I love the play design. I don't care if people say I stole it, but I'm going to execute it way better than you've ever thought about executing it. I've never seen a receiver that wide open in the NFL. Traquan Smith, nobody within 15 yards of him on either side or behind him or in front of him. It was unbelievable design. Traquan really sold the reverse, kind of delayed block and then took off. But when I think back to the game, I wonder if Sean, knowing what he knows now, seeing Jameis make that big play, would he have incorporated Jameis a little more into this offense to take some more shots deep? Because I certainly think the offense needed to get the Buccaneers defense off of them. They kept creeping up closer and closer as the game went along. And I think that was a big story as to why the Buccaneer defense played really good against the Saints offense. They weren't threatened by anything deep.
I'm glad you brought that up. This is a tough question, but when Sean Payton was asked afterwards about Drew Brees' future, he could have just said, next question that he's done before. He could have dismissed it. He said, that's for another press conference. And I thought that was an interesting answer because he loves Drew Brees, but there's got to be a part of him that knows I need to move on. I need to make this offense better. This defense is really good. It's a weird spot for him, Shanle.
It is, because like I said earlier, this Saints team, their identity is the offense. And it's just because for years they were always the top ranked offense. I mean, that's just the identity of the Saints. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you've seen the past 4 years, the defense started to get better. They started to draft better on that side of the ball, started to sign free agents like Demario Davis. The identity of this team is no longer, we're going to score 40 points to your 35 points. And I think that has gotten a lot harder for Coach Payton over the years because he is an offensive guy. He wants to play video game in real life on the football field and not to be able to throw the ball deep. Because when I think of the Saints offense, you think back to Devery Henderson and Robert Meacham and all these guys streaking deep on the great time play to attack the secondary of teams. And not to have that, I think Coach Payton, there's part of him. If you asked him to be 100% honest with you, I think there's part of him that is excited about the challenge of a new quarterback and the ability to get back to doing those things that he did 10 years ago.
And is there a kind of morphed version of Belichick Brady where he wants his identity to be more than Drew Brees because, he hears it that, maybe he wouldn't be the same coach with Drew Brees. And, there's some of that with Brees and Peyton, but there's more of that with Peyton, that he's had Drew Brees all these years. And, Peyton would love the Taysom Hill thing to work. We'll get into that in just a second too. But Sean Payton wants to prove that he can do it without Drew Brees. And he'll never say that, but he wants to.
For sure. He's the ultimate competitor. All those guys are great competitors. Belichick, he wanted to prove that he could do it without Tom Brady, I'm sure. But to me, in this conversation, I've always been on the side of the quarterback. When everybody says, does the quarterback make the coach or does the coach make the quarterback? To me, it's the player. When you look at guys like Peyton Manning, who can pick up in Indy and go to Denver and make them a Super Bowl contender for the entire time he's there, I think those are the type of stories. And then you look at Brady this year in Tampa Bay, those type of stories just from the past 7 years show you it's the player more than the coach. That's not to take anything away from Coach Payton, because I think he's one of the most brilliant minds our game has ever seen. And he changed the way the offensive game is structured. And one thing I love about Coach Payton is he's shown the last 2 years, I can win multiple different ways. If I have to run the ball, if I have to run college RPO stuff, which I know nothing about, I will learn how to do it. And I think him evolving and staying ahead of the game is what makes him one of the all-time great offensive minds.
That's what's made Nick Saban great. I mean, he didn't want that high tempo offense in college, and then once he did it, he said, I'll do it better than anybody, and that's the mentality of Sean Payton in a lot of ways. All right, let's get to Drew Brees. I had a chance to talk to him after the game one-on-one. We hit on a couple things. The first thing is the playoffs the last 4 years. It's been deja vu. How hard is that for number 9?
No other team in the NFL has been more successful than you guys the last 4 years during the regular season. How disappointing is it? And it hasn't always been your fault, the way things have happened in the postseason the last 4 years of this football team.
Yeah. Listen, the regular season is really just your record just positions you for making a run at it in the playoffs. And, man, I can point to all of our losses, in those years, 17, 18, 19, and this year, and say, man, those are games that we all could have won, right? All could have won, should have won. And that's why they play the games, and it's certainly unfortunate that we lost a few of those.
Shanle, that's the hardest interview I've done with Brees, because interviewing him so long, you know what he's going to say. He's not going to say he's retiring. He's not going to make excuses. He's not going to say a lot of things because he's waiting, and I know he wants to think about maybe how he's going to say him at his final press conference. But I thought with him, and I also thought I wanted to ask him, would this game have any impact on his retirement? And I know he wouldn't admit to that either. But I don't think it does. I think he already knew. That's why he played through all the injuries. He knew this was it before the season, Shanle.
I think so too. You go back to last year, and the writing was kind of on the wall last year. When you look at the way the whole Pro Bowl thing shook out with him being the starter, Russell Wilson kind of taking a back seat. But more so than that, whenever you start to sign TV deals, whenever you start to sign with NBC for other jobs, I think that tells you he may have been close to leaving last year, since he already had that deal in place, and then thought, the TV can wait. I can do this one more year, especially when the team had been put together and assembled for one more run at it. I think that weighed heavily on him last year and probably made him come back for one more year. But certainly the disappointing thing is when you hear Drew talk, you win 49 regular season games over the last 4 years, and yet you don't even make another Super Bowl. And on top of it, when you start to think about it, 3 of your 4 playoff losses were at home in the Dome. That's unfathomable to me. One of the greatest home field advantages that there is in the NFL, certainly not this year, but to say you're going to lose 4 times in the playoffs and 3 of those times are going to be at home, I mean, it's hard to comprehend that side of it.
But Shanle, can you imagine if you guys never had won one? You start to think about, man, now I know how the Buffalo Bills feel, and it also makes it really special what you guys did. I mean, can you imagine if you hadn't won one?
Oh, I know. Mike, I thought about that. As soon as that game was over, and I thought, what are they going to say about Drew's legacy? What are they going to say about Coach Payton's legacy? We were extremely close. And I brought this up with the guys that I played with. We were talking about it's unfortunate they weren't able to get another championship with how great these teams were. We point to the game this year against the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts doesn't play that great game, maybe the Saints get the 1 seed. Now they get to play the Rams at home with a banged-up team. They're hosting the NFC Championship game this week. So all those little games that you didn't win during the regular season, even though you won so many over the past 4 years, added up to playoff seeding, making it harder for you to get there. But my point about bringing that up is when I was talking with my former teammates, and I said, you know how dangerously close we are as an organization not to even having rings or a trophy? If Minnesota doesn't have 12 guys in the huddle and they kick a field goal, we have nothing to show for all this greatness over 14 years. I mean, it's a fine line just like that.
Garrett Hartley misses the field goal. I mean, the Minnesota game had so many twists and turns, as you know. I mean, it's unbelievable. But when you look at the whole body of work for Drew Brees, 15 years as a New Orleans Saint, he addressed that as well.
When you look back at this season and your whole career, and I know you have a lot to think about, a lot more good. And we've had so many good times in terms of records and wins in the first Super Bowl. Is it hard to think about that now? Or is it, I mean, how are you approaching just looking back at recent history and what's happened compared to the whole body of work right now?
Man, I'm so grateful for the last 4 years and all the memories and the guys that we've had, just that core group of leaders. I mean, we really, when I think about, the last 15 years with the Saints, I mean, we kind of had one team from '06 to,
Yeah.
08, and then another team from kind of 9 to 13, and then another team from 14 to 16, and now another team from 17 to 20. So, you kind of have these eras, and a lot of it's based on, that core group of leadership that's there and sticks around, and is a big part of that. And man, we have had some of the most tremendous teammates, human beings, leaders, that I have ever had the privilege of being able to play with.
Breeze is always much better after a loss than a win, and same with Sean Payton. And to give that kind of perspective after knowing it's his last game, I really appreciate it. But Shanle, the way he broke it down, and in terms of the 4 teams that he's played on with the Saints, that has to hit home with you because you were a part of those teams.
I think he broke it down perfect, because I think the time I was there, I would break it down into those eras as well. And for us, when going to the NFC Championship game in '06, when nobody gave us a chance, everybody picked us to be last in the NFC South. We were a bunch of no-name guys brought in and assembled at the last minute to form an NFC Championship game appearance. And expectations changed after that moment. Everybody picked us to be in the Super Bowl in '07. We were a 500 team. Then the next year we were a 500 team, tons of injuries. But you could start to see the groundwork for the developing teams like Drew talked about from '09 to '13. And what you did well in '06 is you drafted well. Just like in 2017, you drafted well. That gives you a chance to be really good for a long time. And then you have to put the right pieces in around those type of players. So, Drew, you're very fortunate as a player. And he would be the first to tell you, when you can start to talk about the different eras of your career in one place, you've done something right for a long time.
Well, Breeze, his exit was special, not because of what happened on the football field. It was what happened on the football field after the game. He and Tom Brady shared that moment. And in this day and age with camera phones, there have been many moments like that, but not caught on camera because the media didn't have that luxury in the past. But I did a post-game show with you in studio with our man, Victor Howell, and I kept looking behind me the whole time. Is he still out there with his kids? Is he still playing football with his kids? Because I wanted to make sure as I addressed it. But he was out there at least 2 hours. I think maybe a little more. He was out there after the game with his kids and his wife, Brittany. Then he went in and did the interview with us and with the media, and then he went back out. And I asked him about having that moment after the game, and here's what he had to say.
Your boys are out playing on the football field. They haven't had a chance to do that this year. And it's been a crazy year in so many ways. I guess when you have moments like that, when you see your boys on the football field after a game, you just appreciate it because you haven't been able to enjoy the fans. It's just been a different year, Drew.
Yeah, it has. Listen, I think we all have that vision of just the Superdome rocking, right? And it's been tough not to have that this year. Obviously tough for our fans because they're so integrated into to our team and kind of to this journey as well. But yeah, it was tough not to have them.
In case you're wondering, that noise in the background, don't blame it on the Breeze boys. That's the equipment guys putting stuff in the truck. It's kind of a weird place to put Breeze, but I appreciate the Saints PR guys did a great job during this crazy COVID season, allowing us to do these Zoom interviews and helping us each and every week. But that had to touch you, Shanle, watching that because you have boys and you have a little girl, and you can only imagine how Breeze felt watching that.
Absolutely, Mike. I watched that, and it took me back to when I knew it was my last game in the Dome, and I soaked up the moment. Just like Drew, when I watched him walk off the field, and he gave you that peek over the left shoulder to take it in, I remember doing that. I remember walking through the tunnel and trying to soak it all up as much as I could. And then I remember going out there with my boys and letting them play football for an hour longer than we normally would have stuck around. And so for me to watch that, and then the moment with him and his wife, Brittany, standing in the end zone, kind of forehead to forehead, looking at each other's eyes. Like, I think guys who have families understand the gravity of that moment, all of it. It's hard to explain. It's something that you all want to end your career standing there on the podium with the trophy. And for a select few that happens, but most of us, it doesn't happen. And when I look at Drew, I just wish that we could have had the fans. I wish his last year wouldn't have been in this crazy COVID season where he couldn't get the Drew chant as he ran off the field or a standing roar as he ran out the tunnel for one last time. And, that's something that maybe Drew doesn't think about, but it's something that I thought about as that game went on. And if anybody deserved it, it would have been him. So, but to your point, Mike, watching him after the game, I could relate with so much of what was going on with him in the post game. And nothing helps you to get over losses like having kids, because you know what? When you get done with the game, when I went home or my kids came down to the field to play after the game, they didn't care at whether dad won or lost. They cared, are you hurt? No, I'm good. Okay, well then get out here and throw the football to us and chase us around the field. And they put everything into perspective.
One of my favorite interviews with Breeze this year was along the lines of what you just said. You know, he's been banged up, obviously, and it was the Christmas Day game, and they have meetings, as you know. It's crazy the night before a game. You got all this stuff going on. But when he came home, the kids just threw the pajamas at him, and they had to take the picture. And Breeze just kind of broke down how they weren't patient. Breeze is always great about that. I have a normal family. Our lives aren't perfect. This is what I go through, and I love that during the Pro Bowl, his kids would wrestle, and I love Tom Brady after the game when Brady threw one of the Breeze boys a pass, and he said, "Be nice to your sister." I mean, all of it was great. It was real. It was real emotion. But here's the thing, Shanle. One day, Breeze will have a statue outside the Superdome. One day, he'll have his name in the Ring of Honor. And on those days, especially the Ring of Honor, there'll be fans in the Superdome. And when you guys beat the Falcons, when Gleason blocked that punt, that was the loudest the Superdome has ever been. And that's the loudest I've ever seen or heard a football game. But I think when Breeze is in the Ring of Honor, it may top that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, I talked about not getting that ovation for the Tampa Bay game. It's all going to come to a head. It's all going to accumulate during that time, and it's going to be awesome to see and much deserved. You can't even sit here in an hour podcast and talk about what Drew Brees has meant to the city of New Orleans. It's been unbelievable, and I can't wait for that moment. I can't wait to watch him be enshrined into Canton. I said in our post-game show on CST, there might need to be a different wing of the Hall of Fame built for guys like Drew and Tom Brady and all these different people, because the Hall of Fame, those guys are tremendous football players, great accomplishments, but I think we can all kind of agree there's a different tier of players within that Hall of Fame. When you look at Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Brady and Breeze, and like I said, for what Breeze did during the time he came to New Orleans, I think that's really kind of hard to match that.
Like a car, you put those guys in the front seat. Maybe you put some of those other guys we used to call it the station wagon, in the way back, and maybe different guys in the middle. But yeah, that's a great point. Before we get to more likely, we're kind of touching on the Hall of Fame thing, and more likely, it's a very well-rounded more likely. So please stick around for that, everybody. But let's talk about this team next year moving forward. They're way, way over the cap. Breeze is going to retire. That'll free up some money. But, I think what they need, Shanle, before we get into the players, is that 17-game season will ensure a little more money. That'll help a little bit.
And that's exactly why the owners know the players are in a tough bind when it comes to this 17-game season. The players don't want to do it. The players don't want to do it because right now the owners are saying, right now you get paid 1/17 of your salary. Well, now we're just going to pay you 1/18 of your salary, obviously with the bye week built in. And players are saying, if we're going to play another game, our salaries need to go up. And owners are not on that same page. Well, now the owners have the advantage, because what's going to happen next year, the salary cap is looked to stay the same, if not go down a little bit. If the salary cap goes down because of this COVID season, that puts teams like the Saints in right in the crosshairs, because right now they're $100 million over the cap. You can only kick the can down the road so long. And the reason you kick the can down the road and you roll future cap numbers to future years is because you anticipate the salary cap going up every year. Well, now if the salary cap doesn't go up, it's going to put teams like the Saints and other teams close to the cap in a real disadvantage going into the next season.
All right, so let's trim the fat here. The good news for the Saints, a lot of the big guns are already under contract. The Alvin Kamaras, the Michael Thomases, a lot of the offensive linemen, the Cam Jordans. But the first priority to me has to be locking in Marshawn Lattimore and Ryan Ramczyk.
No question about it. Those two guys, and people are going to say, well, they have one more year, make them play out that year, and then sign other guys around them to make another year. No, if you do that, those guys are going to get to free agency, and they're going to become the highest paid players at the position just based on what we've seen in contracts. Everybody.
And Shanle, you know what? If you do that, Lattimore will be pissed off the whole year too.
Yeah, exactly. Guys will be frustrated. And you need to reward those guys. To me,
Absolutely.
like I said, they're cornerstone type players where any franchise in the NFL would upgrade at the positions that they could play. Left tackle, right tackle, either corner. So you got to find a way to lock those guys up and then worry about the rest of your roster after that.
And that wasn't a dig at Lattimore. Lattimore's exceptional on and off the field. I don't blame him. Alvin Kamara's already gotten his deal. Thomas got his. He deserves to get his as well. Michael Lombardi of The Athletic wrote a great article, and I really agreed with it in terms of what the Saints have to do to get back on track. And it's basically eliminate the middle guys. Re-sign the Ramcheks, re-sign the Lattimores, but you got to let go of the middle guys, the Jared Cooks, the Emmanuel Sanders, the free agents like Marcus Williams and Sheldon Rankins. Keep the upper echelon guys, keep the offensive line and defensive line intact, and draft well. Easier said than done, but keep drafting well with Jeff Ireland still on board. That looks like a very good possibility, but also make smart decisions in free agency like they've done with Demario Davis. I like that approach moving forward. I do.
Well, yeah, and with the salary cap not really moving up or staying the same, you're really going to cut out a lot of those veteran players that you just mentioned, guys who are not looked at as cornerstone veteran players. They're not Alvin Kamara, they're not Michael Thomas. So if they're not that, then let's just draft and sign cheap guys. And that's what's really going to happen over the next couple of years to make up for the money lost with the COVID season. It's unfortunate. And it's been that way for a long time. I've had complaints about the way our union has set up the CBA regarding the veteran players, but that's just how it's going to be. But the other point that you also need to make, Mike, and we haven't really talked about, was this Saints team has enough star players that they can still win games and be competitive. You're not going to go from being what they were to 3-13. That's one thing you're not going to worry about. But you look at the coaching that the Saints team lost. You lost Dan Campbell to the Detroit Lions. He's one of the best assistant coaches in the NFL. Aaron Glenn, who's been working with the secondary for the last 4 years, he's one of the best. He was a great player and one of the best coaches in the NFL. How do you make up for those types of losses? Do you start to see those types of things show up? And then you lost Terry Fontenot in the front office, who's become the GM for the Falcons. Does he start to sign away a bunch of Saints players to weaken the Saints in the division? Those things are all going to add up in the end too.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think it's the most interesting offseason in the Sean Payton era. So many things can happen, and he's going to be busy, obviously trying to get the coaching staff complete. I thought it was interesting with the defensive line coach and the whole LSU. And were you surprised by that?
I was surprised that the Saints blocked him because I really haven't seen that happen a whole lot with the Saints, where they've prevented guys from moving on and getting a promotion. And how do you tell coach when Ryan comes back and you've blocked him? What is that like? How do you go sit in a meeting and be like, I could have been the DC at LSU and calling the shots? But I'm sure they made up for it financially. They made up for it with the title. He's now the assistant head coach, and we just saw Dan Campbell, who had that title, go on and be a head coach. So maybe that was good enough for him to not put up a fight.
Well, at least you feel loved, right?
Everybody wants to feel loved, Mike. Yes,
Yeah.
Everybody wants to feel loved. They gave him a title, probably gave him some more money. He won't be coming under fire if they gives up 40 points to Nick Saban next year. So, Coach Payton was probably like, hey, Ryan, just sit right here. Just bide your time. Just wait your turn. Dan got a head job. Maybe you'll be next.
All right, before we get to more likely, I just want to give a shout out to Terry Fontenot. I don't know him well, and I don't know the inner workings of the scouting department and everybody who's under Mickey Loomis, because there's a lot of people who are important there. But I'll say this about Terry Fontenot. This is kind of a weird thing, but I would see him at halftime at every game, and he was always engaging and always just seemed like he wanted to know. We talk about the game at that point. I don't know what kind of GM he'll make for the Falcons, but I know he's a great people guy, and he's the kind of guy you could tell he's a leader. Maybe you know him better than me. And he started out, I love his story. He started out in the marketing department and moved his way up, and now he's the GM of the Falcons. Obviously, there's a lot to him. I like him personally, kind of like I did Ryan Pace before he left, and I wish him well. I know he's going to the Falcons, but I don't know how much you know about Terry, but he's been around a long time, Shanle.
He has, and he earned everything that he's ever been given, and you love to see stories like that. And I text Terry right away and said, congratulations, you've made life harder on me. How am I supposed to root for you over there?
Really?
And yeah, so Terry is he's a great person. And the one thing that I think about when I think about Terry Fontenot is the smile he always had on his face.
Absolutely.
How engaging he was with people. And Mike, when you see people like that, you think, is this kind of a fraud? Is
Mm-hmm.
this just fake? But I've seen Terry for 14 years, and Terry was the same person every single time. Every single time I saw him, I had my kids at the NFC Championship game against the Rams. He talked to my boys like he talked to me, like he'd known them forever. And
Mm-hmm.
when Terry asks you a question, he's not just asking you to make you think he's interested. He generally wants to know, how's everything going? What's going on?
Right.
Are you doing good? Like, it's hard to find those guys in the front offices of NFL teams where it's the business of winning. But Terry's a genuine person, and Atlanta got a good one.
It's funny you say that because I don't know him like you do, but just knowing him from a kind of an arm's length media wise, you could feel the sincerity with him. You could feel that he's just a good person, and you root for people like that. Kind of like Justin Thomas. Justin, you know what time it is, right? More likely, baby. And boy, Shanle and I are going to debate this subject for long months here, long weeks here ahead. The future quarterback of your New Orleans Saints, as I bring back Justin Thomas and we throw these three questions around. My friends at sportsbetting.com, they've been emailing me things for years in terms of odds on, sometimes, I mean, it's just everything. These guys, like, who's going to have the best Super Bowl commercial? They break it down pretty well. But they had the quarterback odds for who's going to replace Drew Brees next season. And I thought the choices were interesting. It wasn't Taysom Winston. It was Taysom, 5-2 odds, then Matthew Stafford at 4-1, then Jameis Winston. Then they had Phillip Rivers. Obviously, that didn't work out. We'll get to Phillip Rivers in just a second. And then Carson Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo. You could go off the board. I don't know if you will, because it seems, Sean Payton has said the future quarterback is in the building. But if you had to guess more likely who the quarterback will be in game number one, whomever that's against for the New Orleans Saints, who do you think, Justin Thomas?
I'm not going to go off the board, and I'm also not going to pick any of the players who aren't currently on the roster. I think it's down to Winston and Taysom Hill, and I think Sean tipped his hand towards where he would go in the future. I kind of think it's Taysom Hill. Sean stuck with him even through the games that he struggled. I think if Taysom could get another offseason, maybe there'll be a battle in training camp and preseason on who starts between him and Winston. But I definitely think it's between one of those two. I don't think we're going to get any free agent pickups, especially with us already being over the cap so much, $100 million. So if I had to guess, I'm going to say, this is tough, but I'll go with Taysom Hill.
Justin!
Yeah! Yeah! You know what?
I'm not saying I like the decision. I'm just saying I think that's who Sean will probably
Are you saying we're going to run Wildcat the first play of the game next year, and that's why he's the starting quarterback? Is he the guy for 17 weeks?
I don't know. I mean, even though Winston didn't have the whole offseason to prepare and extended training camp, he still had a lot of games during the regular season to get under, this offense under his belt, and Sean still went with Taysom. So why would he change all of a sudden?
Shanle, here's the X factor, though. Can they keep Jameis Winston? I mean, is somebody else going to sign Jameis Winston? Is Belichick going to say, that's my guy moving forward? I want Jameis Winston. Well, I can't imagine those two together. But, Cam Newton, I couldn't imagine them together either. But there's so many moving parts. Does Trevor Siemian not get any love? He said the quarterback's in the building. Siemian was in the building.
No. That's why he didn't make the odds list that you gave out.
I mean, at times I was in the building. At times Shanle was in the building.
My question, though, Mike, with the odds list, so what is classified as the Saints starting quarterback? Is it if Taysom Hill is not the starting quarterback, but he comes out on the first snap of the game and takes a snap in Wildcat and then walks out and Jameis plays the rest of the game? Do those bettors win that money for Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback?
That's a really good point.
You know what? I would think they would. Yes, they would.
Wow. I would think so too.
Yes.
Wow.
But let's just assume. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts. I just want to know. It's so early. That's why podcasts are fun. I mean, we're not even in February yet. We have free agency in March. But if you had to bet, you could go off the board, Shanle. But I don't want to get into my opinion, but their odds. You had Taysom, Stafford, Winston. Forget Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Garoppolo.
It's easy for me to. I want to say. You look at it and you look at the Saints cap issues that we just covered, and you say, well, it's got to be Taysom Hill because Taysom's the only one under contract.
Right.
He's the only one who's taken snaps. And then my answer, Mike, is Jameis Winston. But I think Jameis is going to get a lot of love in free agency. I think there's some teams starving for a quarterback who are not going to be drafted in the top 20 that are going to give Jameis a 2 or 3 year deal with pretty good money. And I don't know if the Saints are going to be able to match it. And so for that reason, if I had to bet, I would say probably Taysom Hill because there's so many unknown. There's a lot of X factors. I don't see them going out and getting a guy like Matthew Stafford for a year or two, unless the Saints feel like they're still in the Super Bowl window. But I don't doubt for 1 second that Sean Payton won't try to call Houston and say, what do you want for Deshaun Watson?
Ooh.
He's always been an all-in guy. He's always been, we are going to try to do it at the highest level. And I would think that they will call about Deshaun Watson. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not, because I think he'll end up being in Houston. But long story short, Mike, I'm going to go safe pick is Jameis Taysom.
Wait, I want to cut in real quick.
I love that you ripped Justin though, and you picked. Oh, you
yeah. First, that's what I was going to say, but also, you think Deshaun will wind up just staying in Houston with as miserable and horrible as that situation sounds?
I do.
Wow.
One thing about Deshaun Watson, he's a great talent. I don't really like the way he's handled this. I don't want my franchise quarterback acting that way. And I know he's been mistreated in some ways, but I just go back to this. Could you see Russell Wilson doing that? Could you see Drew Brees doing that? Peyton Manning? I just don't like that, Shanle. Does that bother you at all?
Yeah, it really does bother me because you are an employee of NFL teams. And I think what's going on is NFL players are seeing NBA players. They're watching James Harden pout his way out. They're watching all these different guys get moved around. And so they're trying to bring that to the NFL. To me, Deshaun, they showed you plenty of respect when they gave you hundreds of millions of dollars. They told you what they thought of you then, but they didn't make you the GM of the team. And I know it's frustrating for a guy like that in that position to not have any say. But they're compensating you well to just play football. And that's how you have to look at it. I am surprised by it, Mike, because I've heard stories about, guys who have done games, broadcasters, CBS, Fox, who have gone to Houston's practices this year, and they've seen Deshaun Watson on the sideline throwing balls into trash cans and horsing around the entire practice.
Oh, man.
And things that guys don't hear about.
Drew Brees does that all the time, doesn't he?
Yeah. Those are things that people don't hear about, but then they want to blame everybody else. I mean, you have to be a constant professional at all times, and that's the exhausting part of being an NFL quarterback.
Drew Brees actually does that after in the quarterback challenge, but he doesn't do it during practice. Yeah, go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
I was going to say, is J.J. Watt's frustration there or excusable when compared to Deshaun?
It is. What do you mean? As far as,
I mean, JJ's handled it better, but obviously J.J. Watt is equally as frustrated as Deshaun is in Houston. So
yeah, but he's handled it better. He hadn't done the social media stuff.
I agree.
I think he's handled it way better. And for me, if JJ would have come out and said, I'm mad because I don't get to say who we hire as a coach, I think that takes it to a different level of you have to understand what your place is in the organization. You're not in the front office.
I think it's a case of there's people around Deshaun Watson telling him you're being disrespected, blah, blah, blah. And this day and age of social media, not only do you have people around you, but you have people on social media pumping your ego up too. And that's a whole different dynamic with today's athlete. It really is. I mean, it's different than even when Russell Wilson came in the league, or I'm not excusing it, but that's why social media is a problem. I'm going to throw this out. I'm on the Taysom train. I want to see it because I think it'd be exciting. But I think Matthew Stafford's kind of intriguing. I don't think they could afford him though. But I mean, I think Matthew Stafford's a guy. He's never had the supporting cast that he should, but he's always had the arm and he's been productive. What if they brought in like a Stafford, Shanle?
I would think I would take a Matthew Stafford for a year or two, but that's assuming you still have this core group of team where you're not building for the future. Because if you're going to build for the future, you got to do it with a young guy and just start getting him experience. But if you feel like you can compete for a Super Bowl And if you keep these core pieces, maybe you can. I think Matthew Stafford may be the best option, honestly, if you're keeping the majority of your team together.
Yeah, because I think the window is still there. And the funny thing is, people forget how old Taysom is. I mean, I'm guessing Stafford's older than Taysom. I'd have to look that up, but he's been.
No, I
they're
don't
about-
forget how old Taysom is. I remember how Taysom can't throw the football very well.
Man. You know what though? What if he had an entire off season though? What if he?
That's the thing, Mike.
He's at 3.
No. I mean, a real, like a normal one. This wasn't a normal off season. This past one, it wasn't.
What are you talking? He's had 3 off
But
seasons.
he's been there for 3 years, so he's probably played a lot more quarterback than some of these other guys.
No. I mean, a normal off season as the guy, not the Swiss Army knife, as a quarterback.
Well,
maybe, but at the same time, you just mentioned his age. He's 30 years old. How
long are you going to wait on that
how
project?
long are you going to wait? But
I
Mike,
get family
quickly,
ammunition on the age.
Yeah.
You know?
quickly on your offseason point, Mike, it's already being reported that there's not going to be an offseason. It's going to be just like last year. There's not going to be OTAs or mini camps, probably no preseason. So it's going to be hard on guys like Jameis again. Jameis is going to sit there and have to do Zoom meetings again and be named the starting quarterback for the Saints. That would be hard again as well.
But before we move into question number 2, how about the range of emotions for Jameis against the Bucs? He throws the touchdown pass, kind of gives the Saints the lead, puts them over a little bit, and then he has to watch Tom Brady go to the NFC Championship game. That had to be brutal.
Oh, I'm sure it was brutal. That would be really hard. And then to see Tom not turn the ball over and to do everything that you got critiqued for and criticized for, that was holding your team back. But is there really any shame in saying, yeah, I lost my job to Tom Brady? I don't think there really is.
That's true. That's a good point. It's not like it was, I don't know, Matthew Stafford.
Trevor Siemian,
who was in the building. Whatever. All right, more likely number 2. We mentioned Phillip Rivers retiring, and we mentioned Drew Brees retiring. He hasn't announced it yet, but it's going to happen. How about Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers, joined at the hip with the Chargers and potentially could go in the Hall of Fame together in 5 years? But is Phillip Rivers a first ballot Hall of Famer, Justin Thomas, more likely?
I'm going to say no. I do think he gets in eventually. I don't know how many years it'll take. Phillip Rivers, I know he but he's top 5 in a lot of categories in terms of, passing and whatnot, but he doesn't have a Super Bowl. He never could quite get there. For a long time of his career, he had LaDainian Tomlinson, who helped tremendously. I think he's good enough to get in. I just don't see it being a first ballot Hall of Famer, especially I'd have to look and see who else will be eligible for that class. But
well, that's part of the question. I mean, Brees will be in that class. So to me,
that's the other thing. Yeah. I mean, it'd be hard to. They just don't compare him and Brees. So if Brees is going in, then you're going to let Phillip Rivers in. I mean, like I said, I don't know how many else would be eligible for that time, but I don't see it happening.
I thought it was great, Shanle. You know how the writers of each city pitched the Hall of Fame guys, and the guy from Indianapolis was pitching Peyton Manning. He's like, I'm sitting here and I can't drop my computer, but I'm doing a mic drop. Peyton Manning Hall of Fame. That's all he said. Like he didn't pitch any stats. He didn't say anything about Peyton Manning, and that's I guess Jeff Duncan could do that in 5 years because he's the guy in New Orleans with Drew Brees. But what do you think, Shanle? Is Phillip Rivers a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I'm going to say not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he is a Hall of Famer. And I think the people are actually debating whether or not Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer. I don't understand that debate because he's 5th all time in touchdown passes, and his streak of 240 straight starts is only behind
amazing.
Brett Favre. I mean, that's pretty incredible. It's remarkable. Unfortunately for Phillip, he played on the West Coast with the Chargers. They never went to a Super Bowl. They had some really good teams, but he gets knocked because they had really good teams and couldn't get over the hump. But Phillip Rivers is definitely a Hall of Famer. He's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because of no Super Bowls and none of the big memorable wins, but he consistently did it great for a number of years. And I think what's going to be hard for people to start voting for Pro Bowlers, Mike, is the way the game has changed is completely different now. So you're going to have average quarterbacks that people are going to show their stats to Bradshaw and all these other guys, and they're going to blow them away because of the passing yards and how skewed the game is now to the offensive side of the football. But there's no doubt that I think Phillip Rivers is a quarterback. For me, when I think of Hall of Famers, what era can he only succeed in the current era? I think Phillip Rivers is a player who could have played in any era and been great.
Good points. Here's the interesting thing for me. When you look at the Hall of Fame, I always like the eye test. When you hear a guy's name, some people, oh yeah, definitely Hall of Famer. Some other guys, you got to kind of think about it. I think Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, but I kind of have to think about it. With Drew Brees, I'm dropping the mic. That was my pin. But you drop the mic. With Peyton Manning, with Tom Brady, a lot of these guys, even like a Aaron Rodgers, some of these other guys that are going to be coming next. But I think Phillip Rivers gets in. You mentioned earlier in the podcast, though, the wing that you'd put Brees and some of these guys in. Phillip Rivers is not in that wing. And I don't think he goes in with Drew Brees. I think he is a Hall of Famer. But, before we move on, and we mentioned it to the last podcast, can you give me one good trash-talking moment with Phillip Rivers when you played against him? Because there were no cuss words involved, right?
Phillip Rivers he talked way too much trash for not having any talk trashing game. I'll tell you that. you have to cuss. There has to be some 4-letter words.
What did he say? Like, gosh darn it, man, you hit me too hard.
4-letter words. I could tell you one time I came on a blitz and I hit him. His tight end didn't turn out on the backside or something, and I smacked him. It might have been a preseason game in New Orleans. Hit him hard, like took him down, and I was kind of looking at him and like nodding my head, staring at him as I go up, and he called me a turd.
Yeah,
that was his trash talking. And here's the truth. This is God's honest truth. He calls me a turd, and he's saying, "Gosh darn it, golly gee," all these different things as I walk away, and he's giving me that scowl and spit's flying everywhere. And then he finds me after the game and he goes, "Hey, I'm sorry about that."
Oh, really?
He's like, "You're a great player. I've seen you play a long time. Keep doing yeah." So he apologized. He felt bad about doing it.
That's why I love doing this podcast with you, because I never know what I'm going to get out of you. That was maybe your best story ever. That was fantastic. That was.
I'm gonna tell that. Maybe Phillip will invite me to Canton and I can tell that story up on the stage.
I got called a turd by Phillip Rivers. Yeah, that's all. You'll be in the video they play right before his speech. Fantastic. Oh my gosh. All right, this is kind of an off the wall. I like to go a little, out of the box for the last one. On the Dan Patrick Show, which I love. I love that show. Sometimes at the end of the day, I don't know about you guys, I don't watch as much TV anymore. I just pull up Dan Patrick's interviews on YouTube. I love them. They're great every day. I watch them all. But he said something recently I thought was kind of funny because they talk non-sports. He said the other day he was in his kitchen and he didn't have this for 10 years, but he had cereal. He ate some cereal for the first time in 10 years. My question to you guys, it's a tough one, man. Is there something that you haven't had? It doesn't have to be 10 years, but something that you enjoyed recently in the kitchen or maybe in life that you haven't had in a long time? Because when I saw that with Dan Patrick, now I'm stalling because I want you to think about it. But when I heard that with Dan Patrick, I thought, man, and I went to the grocery store with my daughter the other day and we bought something I haven't had in a long time, which I'll get to in just a second. But is there something, doesn't have to be 10 years, that more likely you haven't enjoyed in a long time that you thought, man, it's really good? Justin Thomas, you get to go first with that.
A Super Bowl win for the Saints.
Oh! Justin Thomas, dropping the mic, ladies and gentlemen.
No, seriously, Mike, that's a great question. I can't think of. That's really tough. I can't think of anything. Yeah, I'm going to take my Super Bowl victory.
Oh, yeah, you should have stuck with that. I like that. We let Shanle marinate on this a little bit. So it doesn't have to be 10 years, Shanle, but you have kids. And kids sometimes, they want different things. Is there something that you've had recently you're like, man, I haven't had that in a while?
I'm even though I've had 5 minutes to think about this, I can't because I'm spoiled. I wouldn't wait a long time to get something that I.
That's how I am.
I'm not that patient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to me, why would a guy wait 10 years to get some cereal if that's what he wanted? That's what I want to know.
That's kind of sad when you put it like that.
You know what cereal he had too that I thought was interesting? Because I definitely haven't had this in 10 years. He had honeycomb. When's the last time you thought of honeycomb? It kind of made me want to go buy some.
I forgot about Now that kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. All right, I'll tell you what I hadn't had, and I don't know if it's been 10 years, man, but it's been a while. I had an Oreo the other day. Hadn't had an Oreo in a long time. Double stuff Oreo too.
double stuff.
They have like quadruple stuff, mega stuff now, Mike. It's insane. There's more stuffing than actual cookie if you find them.
I saw one the other day. I think it was an Oreo brand, but it was like a Snickers type Oreo, and I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna have to try that."
Yeah, my daughter loves Snickers, so yeah, that's in our country wonders why we have health problems, Shanley.
Seriously.
I mean,
That's
what are we
why
gonna have in
health
5
insurance is
years?
so expensive. Yeah.
All right,
So true.
we'll bail Shanley out on that. All right, we're going to go to predictions. We're going to keep them alive because there's still stuff to play for. We're all 1-1 because we all predicted the Saints would win out of the gates, out of the playoffs here. So we're all 1-1. But we're going to go playoff predictions now. Justin didn't even know we were doing this. I don't know if Shanley did either. But we're going to keep rolling here. Okay, we'll go AFC Championship game. We have Chiefs and we have Bills Mafia, baby. Gotta love Bills Mafia. I'm pulling for Bills Mafia. I don't know if I can pick them, but Justin, we're gonna do straight up picks. Who do you like in the AFC Championship game?
I told my wife before this last Saints game, if Saints go out, I'm rooting for Bills all the way. I'm going to pick them just because I really would love to see them go to the Super Bowl and win. So I'm going to go with Bills over Chiefs.
Nice.
And are we doing NFC too, or are we just doing AFC first?
We'll go AFC around the board here. Shanley, what do you think AFC?
AFC, I think the Chiefs are going to win. Well, if Patrick
It's going to be a good matchup.
If Patrick Mahomes is 100%, like close to 100%, and that toe's not bothering him, I think the Chiefs are going to win because I think the Ravens could not throw the ball at all. And so the Bills never really got tested last week, and that's going to hurt them going into this matchup, going against probably the most explosive offense. Even though the Chiefs have been struggling a little bit, I just don't know if the Bills are going to be able to slow them down. The Bills have no running game, and that's going to hurt them. I'm cheering for the Bills. I want to see the Bills in the Super Bowl, but I think the Chiefs are going to win.
Is it an advantage for Josh Allen? Everybody's predicting him to lose for the most part. He's got to play loose, right? He's got to be pretty loose in this game. Or maybe not because he's never played in a game like this too. So.
He's never played in a game like this. He's playing against the defending Super Bowl champions. And for this whole week, Mike, he's listened to, "You are our savior. We've never won a Super Bowl. You have to get rid of 4 Super Bowl losses."
Oh, that's
no
true.
pressure, Josh.
That's true. Shanley, the voice of reason again. I got to say this about Buffalo. Remember we did that pregame show where they brought the wings to us on the field?
Oh,
Yeah.
They were as nice at that stadium. They're the nicest people in Buffalo. They deserve success. They're a fan base, kind of like Cleveland. But boy, every time I've been to Buffalo, man, the people are just so nice there. I'm pulling for them so hard. But man, if Mahomes plays, I got to pick the Chiefs. I'm sorry. So Justin, Bills, Shanley, Chiefs, Neighbors, Chiefs. All right, NFC Championship, baby. I live in Tampa. They're crazy here because they haven't had success in so long. Tom Brady's not going to be afraid of the cold. I'm not going to break it down. I'm going to pass to Justin, but what do you think? Bucks and Packers up in Lambeau. First time they had an NFC Championship game there in, I think, 10 years up there or something like that.
I think this is going to be a really good game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little close too, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. I just think he's really good. He can make something out of nothing, something that Tom Brady seems to not be able to do as he gets older. I just think they're a really good team. I think the Bucs are a good team too, but I think the Packers are a better coach. So because of that, I'm going to go with Packers.
Nice. Shanley, what do you think?
I'm going Green Bay at home in the cold. I think Tom Brady has a chance to look really bad, and a week later, everybody praised him last week for going, 18 of 31 for 199 yards, and they acted like he was the reason they won the game. Their defense was the reason they won the game, and the fact that they actually handed the ball off was the reason they beat the Saints last week. I don't think they're going up to Green Bay in the cold weather and are going to be able to keep up with Green Bay's offense. I think Green Bay scores 31, 28 points. I think potentially Tom Brady could look really old and really bad 1 week later after everybody was singing his praises. It is so hard the older you get to go play in cold weather. He has not experienced that at all this year. I think it could be a shock to that team. I think Packers by 14.
Interesting. The number for me, how about this number, guys? 38. The Bucs lost to the Saints 38-3, came back and beat the Saints. The Packers lost to the Bucs 38-10, and I think the trend continues. They play better, especially at home, and beat the Bucs. This stat is amazing to me. In the first meeting between the Bucs and the Packers, Aaron Rodgers threw a pick six. He has 4 pick sixes in his career. his
That's amazing.
career.
That's
That
amazing.
is amazing.
That is just an amazing stat.
But conversely to that, I think the one thing you can rip Aaron Rodgers on is that he's kind of a front runner. He doesn't come from behind too much. I was looking at, the all-time quarterbacks in terms of fourth quarter comebacks. Number 1 is Peyton Manning. Number 2 is Brady. Number 3 is Breeze. Aaron Rodgers, he's 48th on that list.
Wow.
Whoa.
48th. He's tied with like Brian Sipe and Ron Jaworski and Jake. I mean, it's just all these old quarterbacks. You wouldn't think so. So I think he's great when they're winning. But if they get off to a lead early, I think the Packers will win that game, and I think that's what happens. So it'll be interesting, man. We went a long time, but we had a lot to get into, from Drew Brees' retirement, last game for the Saints, what's going to happen moving forward. Everybody's on the Taysom train. I'm all excited, man. This is going to be great. Shanley's on the Taysom train finally. No, he said Taysom and James. But we're going to have a podcast every week this offseason for the most part. And because it's going to be the busiest offseason, the Sean Payton era, a lot to talk about each and every week. So we will keep this train moving. Justin, where are we on Twitter?
At Dundat Podcast.
And we're on all the platforms from iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher. So please subscribe. Please give us feedback. We're growing, and we appreciate everybody's support on this podcast. I know it was another tough season, Saints fans. But as Shanle mentioned earlier, I think with the talent coming back, it's still possible for this team to make the playoffs and be exciting moving forward. It'll just be different without number 9. For Scott Shanle, for Justin Thomas, I'm really Mike Nabors. We'll talk to you next week.